Hi there, English 112 folks. It is lovely to see you guys again. I'm sorry for the delay on this video. It is October and I am actually opening a show soon, and so there was just a lot going on. But I wanted to take some time to just kind of walk you through some of the stuff going on for this week and next, and so that you get a chance to kind of like process through as we are getting into some of the meatier parts of the course. So, what I want to call your attention to first is I'm going to be kind of giving you a little warm up to poetry here in a moment. Um, but what I do want to make sure that you can see is I wanted you to see a couple of things. One is your presentation sign up, and then also what's going to be in the presentation, your annotated bibliography, and then I'll get into some poetry. So, some housekeeping items. So, for this week, there is just a reflection on the midterm and how you're doing thus far and where you feel like you need to develop your skills and how you are growing as a writer and then questions moving forward. So that is really helpful for me to kind of see where you are and then also where we need more focus. And then the only other assignment for this week is that you are going to be working on Black Walnut Tree annotations for poetry. So this is one of my favorite poems by Mary Oliver, and so I hope you really enjoy it. But as you read and you're interacting with the text, I do highly encourage that you respond to others with multiple interpretations. I've seen a few of you do that over the last couple of weeks, and it has been really very helpful to see like how you guys are interacting with the text and then interacting with each other. So it's not so necessary that you write something that somebody else has written. It's more so that you are like continuing a conversation. And so those were the two assignments for the week. But I did want to kind of give you some guidelines and guideposts as we're moving forward. So the first thing I want to show you is right here, your annotated bibliography. Now, this is not going to come up until the end of the course. And so this is more of an earworm or a thought that you need to have in your mind. But your annotated bibliography will be 20% of your final grade. It's your final exam. Now, it's very different from 111 because one, our focus is literature and research, and then also adding an APA. So, because of those kind of like things that are coming at you a little bit differently, it's going to be more important that you find a topic that you can like really examine the rhetorical situation more so than if you are focusing in on like a full research. So initially I had kind of thought that we were going to do an argumentative research, and then I thought I'd scale it back to be more of a detailed annotated bibliography to really kind of see where your research stands. So what I want you to think about for your annotated bibliography, and this is something that you're going to think about for the last half of the class, but you're going to choose a text um, from the textbook that we have. So these are all different texts that are in your textbook. If there is one that you cannot find, or if it exists somewhere that's not clear in your text, let me know and I will make sure that it's linked here. They should all be in there. If they are not in there, I will most definitely link them. But what you will be doing is you're going to pick a text, okay, and then you're going to pick a topic from the text. What does that mean? That means if you're going to choose Marge Percy's Barbie doll, that you're going to take issues of feminine beauty or societal standards of female body and body dysmorphia. If you're going to do Edwidge Dantica, it might be about post-colonial studies. So whatever it is, you just choose a text to anchor you, and then you're going to choose a topic that exists within that text that you're going to explore in more detail. So if you need help kind of like brainstorming that, let me know. There are other pieces I'm willing to accept that are like short stories or poems. If you have a different suggestion, I just want to make sure that I'm familiar with it and that it is something that is considered like of a literary high canon so that I can make sure that it is appropriate to task. So, what you're going to do with that is you're going to pick a text and a topic or theme, and you're going to go into details about research. You're going to write a thesis, and then you're also going to you're going to summarize that piece of information, a rhetorical analysis of the information, and then relevance to the topic that you were exploring for each of those sources. So, what does this mean for your presentation? Well, let's go back. All right. So, for your presentation, the reason I'm bringing up the annotated bibliography is that some of you are going to be presenting next week. Okay. And so those of you who are presenting as of this moment in time um, are Abby Price, Elizabeth Goodwin, Trinity Bailey, and Andrea Ferguson. So if you are on that list and you're like, oh, I didn't know I had to present, and there is no way that that's going to work, just let me know and maybe move your name around. And then that way I can like find a better spot for you that may not feel quite as soon. But if you still feel confident that you want to go ahead and do it early, then we can check in and chat about this. But what your presentation will be is you can kind of think about it as a way to either reflect your understanding of your final topic, or it can help you move into more detail about your final topic. So it does need to be related to your annotated bibliography topic. Now, if you choose to change it, that's on you. I'm totally okay with it, but you do need to make sure that you know that the topic will be different by the time you get to the annotated bibliography. So if you choose to do two different topics altogether, that is okay, but you do need to make sure that your presentation still matches all of the components on the rhetorical situation. So as you're creating your presentation, for those of you who are up next week, you're going to look at the circumstances that shape the topic just like you would for rhetorical analysis. You're going to focus on space cat stuff. You're going to look at the setting and the counter arguments related to your topic. And in that presentation, you're also going to bring in something that is a multimodal or media artifact. So that could be like a YouTube video or a political cartoon or a TikTok. It really doesn't matter, but it needs to be on your presentation somewhere. And it's something that's engaging or media related that you're going to use to help illustrate your topic. And just when you are practicing your presentation and the recording, just practice like making sure that the tech works beforehand before you start recording, just to make sure that the video plays appropriately. So, what you're going to do with that is you're going to, in your rhetorical situation presentation, you are going to look at your sources and you're going to look at the rhetorical situation surrounding those sources and you're going to inform that topic. So, you're going to record that presentation. You're going to use CRAP principles, which are like principles of slide design. And you are going to I focus in on the space cat of your sources and the space cat of your media source. And then you do need to make sure that you are explaining the connection to the topic, the connection to the literature, and how it relates to rhetoric, how it relates to timeliness of the topic, and then how it relates to the literature. And I do have some additional things here that can help with the rhetorical triangle and things about like Space Cat. If it's something that you should have done a little bit more so in 111, but if you haven't done it as much, I did include all of the information about rhetoric as a refresher. Um, but that is kind of like the nuts and bolts of the rhetorical situation presentation and annotated bibliography. So if you have any questions about yours, please let me know. The next few weeks are definitely going to go a little bit um, a little bit more in a relaxed student-led way because you are going to be leading a lot of the conversations. And so we will have discussion boards for each of our presenters so that we get a chance to respond to their topics. And that'll be really where our discussion boards focus from here on. Okay. All right. I know I threw a lot at you, but hopefully that will help alleviate any confusion as you are moving through the last few weeks of the course. Okay. All right. So in regards to poetry, we're kind of bringing in poetry now. And since we're bringing in poetry, we did a smattering of short stories, and now we're kind of bringing in a little poetry. And so, as a warm up, I just wanted to frame some ideas for you as we move through. All right. So, poetry. Okay. So, poetry is one of those pieces of media and text that people either love or hate. So, people usually love poetry or they hate poetry. There's usually not a lot of in between. If you say, "Oh, I'm fine with poetry," then, well, that's great for you. I just don't see it a lot. So, to kind of get us moving and thinking about poetry and like kind of chewing on some of these big topics that we've got. Here's a Mary Oliver poem for you. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? This grasshopper, I mean, the one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around in her enormous, complicated eyes. And now she lifts her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to idle and bless, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? I love this poem because it really it contemplates how we live our lives, and it contemplates like what we value, and it contemplates like what is the world and what is the meaning of like what we do with ourselves while we're here. And I just love pieces like that. Okay, so moving through and trying to make sure that I don't yap on too long, here's another poem that I love about the state of the world. Tired by Langston Hughes. I am so tired of waiting, aren't you, for the world to become good and beautiful and kind? Let us take a knife and cut the world in two and see what worms are eating at the rind. Take that as you will, but I really love the imagery there of thinking about the world as being of two halves and divisive and what's eating us at the core. And then this is a Baka poem that we are reading for this week. And so thinking about like poetry as an offering, right? As like a tribute, as a piece that is beautiful, as something that is that distills our humanity down into a few phrases. And I love that Baca says that he's offering this poem to us. And I don't want to read this whole thing because I just read two poems to you, but I am offering this poem to you since I have nothing else to give. Keep it like a warm coat when winter comes to cover you, or like a pair of thick socks the cold cannot bite through. I love you. So, the way that I like to view poetry is that I like to think of it as an experience of the way that we can like feel things differently and find ways to process through how we feel in words. So, even though poetry and poetry analysis can sometimes feel to be like very granular and very specific and like getting into like the nuts and bolts of it. At the core, poetry is really about human feeling and it's about human emotion and it's how you're interacting with the world. And yeah, they're short and that's a great benefit. But the other thing is that it's distilled. Everything about the human experience is distilled in these like small little phrases that can carry with us beyond just the text. It's something that can be reflected upon as we move forward. So the way that I like to kind of think about poetry, and it's harder in an online class, but I like to think about poetry as songs, contemporary pieces, personal responses, and then attaining skills while not beating the poem to death. I have some clips here, and I do this in class when I have a little bit more time, but since this is online and a recording, I do encourage you to watch some of those videos. They are very inspiring, and there's some pieces from Walt Whitman in here. But the last thing I wanted to leave you with in regards to poetry, as you're thinking through Mary Oliver, as you're thinking through rhetorical situation, and as you're thinking through like just what's your relationship like with literature and poetry. Poetry is not always moralistic, which means that it's not always going to tell you how you should feel. It's not always going to tell you, like, how to be a good person. Sometimes it's dark, sometimes it's gritty, sometimes it's about like the things that make us sad. It's also not always beautiful. Sometimes poetry can be really raw and visceral and disgusting and still have meaning. And poetry also doesn't necessarily have to rhyme. It can. It can have rhymes in lots of different creative ways, but it doesn't always have to rhyme. And so kind of think about like what's your relationship with poetry if it doesn't always fit the conventions of what we think poetry is. So as you're reading poetry, as you're experiencing poetry over the next few weeks, what I want you to think about is how does it focus on experience over philosophy? How do they turn things that are unpleasant into things that have emotional resonance or emotional power? And how they condense the words and concentrate those words to create an experience that it may not resonate with you, but how might it resonate with others? And I want to skip to the end. I have a Taylor Swift song on here, so if you want to watch that, it's always really fun. Okay, these are some examples of annotations. Let me skip into that. Okay, so for the week, again, I feel like I'm taking too long. So annotate Mary Oliver's Black Walnut Tree. Make sure that you go through the guidelines, reach out if you have questions, and then as you're reflecting on your midterm, think through like what are some pieces of literature that you might want to explore with your annotated bibliography? How can you connect those two things together? On that note, I hope you have a really wonderful week, and I look forward to seeing more on the discussion boards.